In July 1947, an alien ship transporting 3 extraterrestrial beings crashed in Roswell. Unfortunately, 2 passengers died in the accident and the only survivor was a deaf officer named Errol, a seasoned engineer. Errol worked side by side with an Earth EB identified as Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. A nurse by profession, Matilda provided healthcare to the U.S. Army Air Force Roswell Army Airfield, 509th Bomb Group. Unbeknown to McElroy at the time, Errol recognized her as one of the soldiers assigned to the ill-fated Domain Expeditionary Force Battalion that got captured, killed, and placed on Earth 10,000 years ago. This discovery made Errol adamant about communicating with Matilda. McElroy was amazed at how easily she unlocked her ability to communicate telepathically despite being unaware of its existence throughout her life. She could read Errol's thoughts and vice versa, and this prompted Errol to learn English to understand more about Earth's culture. The Air Force provided Errol with countless books on cultures, history, and lifestyles. After examining them in detail, Errol realized Earth EBs would benefit greatly by knowing what really happened behind the scenes, rather than getting deceived by the records documented by the Old Empire's fictional timeline of events. Records from the Domain Archive indicate that Errol has served the deaf for thousands of years. She is an officer, pilot, and engineer, and her roles made her initially hesitant to interact with inhabitants of planets within the domain. Several million years ago, however, she received training on investigation and data evaluation and then became a program development officer. The domain added Errol to the search team traveling to planet Earth, and her role was to interrogate the human population that inhabited the adjoining area at that time. Following the logical extension of the evidence, testimony, and observation, as well as the absence of substantiating facts, Errol led her team to the discovery that Old Empire ships were active and concealed within proximity. The deaf search team also detected Old Empire installations in the solar system of which we had been completely unaware. At this point, Errol was prepared to narrate to McElroy the history of Earth and where Homo sapiens came from. Theory of evolution. The theory of evolution assumes that the motivational source of energy responsible for animating every life form does not exist. It rather suggests that an inanimate object or a chemical concoction can suddenly become alive or animate either accidentally or spontaneously. The Big Bang theory, for instance, states that a massive explosion in space led to the existence of human beings. Furthermore, Darwin's theory explains the origin of man began when a few apes evolved into human beings. In reality, these theories collectively lack unshakable evidence because the originators relied on false assumptions. Dr. Frankenstein did not resurrect the dead into marauding monsters, except in the imagination of the EB who wrote the fictitious story on a dark and stormy night. It's also strange that no scientist originating from the Western world ever stopped to consider who, what, where, and when, or how this animation happens. Complete ignorance, denial, or unawareness of the spirit as the only source of life force that can animate inanimate objects or cellular tissue, is the main reason behind failures in Western medicine. Additionally, evolution isn't a spontaneous process, rather it requires a great deal of technology which must be manipulated under the careful supervision of EBs. In the course of history, human beings have attempted to instigate evolution by breeding varieties of farm animals and creating vaccines. However, the notion that the human biological organism emerged naturally from earlier ape-like forms is incorrect. There's absolutely no physical evidence that exists to substantiate the notion that modern humanoid bodies evolved on this planet. You won't come across sufficient manifestation of evolution, because the idea that human bodies evolved spontaneously from the primordial ooze of chemical interactivity, in the dim mists of time, is nothing more than a hypnotic lie instilled by the amnesia operation to hinder your recollection of the true origins of mankind. The truth is that humanoid bodies have existed in various forms throughout the universe for trillions of years. Several billion years ago, Errol belonged to a scientific team that worked inside a gigantic biological laboratory located in a galaxy far away from the Milky Way. The team consisted of technicians while Errol was a biological engineer assigned to manufacture and supply new life forms to uninhabited planets. During that period, there were millions of star systems containing millions of inhabitable planets. Several biological laboratories, similar to Errol's workstation, also existed during the same period, and each specialized in producing different kinds of life forms, depending on the class of the planet being populated. The Arcadia Regeneration Company, which hired Errol as a biological engineer, specialized in creating mammals suited for forested areas and birds adapted for tropical regions. Technicians created animals that were compatible with the variations in climate, atmospheric and terrestrial density, and chemical content. In addition, Arcadia Regeneration owned numerous subsidiaries and paid its teams of scientists to integrate specimens with biological organisms engineered by other companies operating on various planets. As you can imagine, the technicians' research required a great deal of interstellar travel to conduct planetary surveys. Errol took it as an opportunity to learn aviation and became an excellent pilot. The research team stored data collected from planetary surveys in huge computer databases where biological engineers could access and evaluate the information. The data inspired designs and artistic renderings for new creatures. Blueprints for new life forms attracted plenty of attention and got sold to the highest bidders. A few clients would approach companies directly and request customized beings. The technicians had artificially created environments purposed for testing the phototypes. Imperfections were worked out, modifications made, and eventually, the new life form was endowed, or animated, with a life force or spiritual energy before being introduced into the actual planetary environment for final testing. Any conflicts between life forms from different companies would be negotiated, and each side modified its creations to achieve a perfect state of being. This is part of a science or art we call eugenics. What you currently see on Earth is the huge variety of life forms left behind. The truth is that all life forms on this and any other planet in this universe were created by companies such as Arcadia Regeneration Company. How else can you explain the millions of completely divergent and unrelated species of life on the land and in the oceans of this planet? Is there a more logical explanation of the source of spiritual animation which defines every living creature? Acknowledging biodiversity as the work of God is merely settling for an ambiguous answer. Every EB has countless names and faces in different times and places. Every EB is a god, and when they inhabit a physical object, they are the source of life. This is easily understood when a near-death experiencer often sees their lifeless body from above. Species. There are millions of species of insects, and approximately 350,000 of these are beetles. Planet Earth contains 100 million species of life forms at any given time. Moreover, the population of extinct species on Earth greatly exceeds what we currently have in living fauna and flora. Unfortunately, only a handful of the extinct species will be rediscovered in the fossil or geological records of Earth. The current theory of the evolution of life forms on Earth does not consider the phenomena of biological diversity. Evolution by natural selection is science fiction because one species does not accidentally or randomly transform into another breed, as the Earth textbooks indicate, without the manipulation of genetic material by an EB. Creating the duck-billed platypus, for instance, demanded savvy engineering to combine the body of a beaver with the bill of a duck to form a mammal that lays eggs. It would take many years to make this unique mammal a self-replicating life form. Creating life forms is a very complex, highly technical work for EBS specializing in this field. However, the memory erosion program executed by the old empire is why Earth biologists find genetic anomalies baffling. In addition, the false memory implantations from the old empire prevent Earth scientists from observing obvious anomalies. The greatest technical challenge experienced when forming life forms was the invention of self-regeneration or sexual reproduction. It was invented as the solution to the problem of having to continually manufacture replacement creatures for those that had been killed and eaten by other creatures. Planetary governments were tired of frequently purchasing replacement creatures. Then came the concept of the food chain that was birthed from greed after one of the biggest companies in the bioengineering industry suggested that a creature needs to consume the body of another life form as an energy source. The bioengineering company responsible for the food chain also created flowering plants together with the symbiotic relationship present between blooming flora and insects to sustain propagation. Unfortunately, the corporation also had a division that created bacteria and parasites. After implementing the food chain across all planets, the animal's population declined sharply since the devious company that suggested this concept massively produced carnivores. The solution to replenishing life forms was obtainable through sexual reproduction. Unfortunately, the corporation that intentionally created this problem ended up developing the blueprints for sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction. The introduction of sexual reproduction necessitated other bioengineering enterprises to redesign their creations for this purpose. Homo sapiens rely on the chemical-electrical trigger process to stimulate and fulfill sexual reproduction. The old empire's quartz screens generated electronic waves that produced a sensation similar to a sexual orgasm directed at EBs. The mesmerized EB was quickly lured to inhabit a humanoid or flesh-like body, then remained trapped on planet Earth forever. Every trap in the universe, including those used to capture unbound EBs, is baited with this aesthetic electronic wave. The sensation caused by this wave is more attractive to an EB compared to any other sensation. Based on this, you can understand why the ruling class of the domain strictly uses doll bodies to carry out their assignments. Almost all EBs currently inhabiting planet Earth are working-class EBs stuck inside flesh bodies. Upon physical death, the EB will be recycled again to another body, programmed to have sex, reproduce, then die, and experience this loop all over again to infinity. Higher-class EBs, on the other hand, can enter and exit various bodies at will. A majority of the Domain Expeditionary Force personnel belong to doll body classes. How to become a higher-class EB. The Supreme Master Suma Ching Hai believes that one orgasm may cost you 5 days of meditation. Perhaps this is the reason why many ascended masters avoided marriage, since transitioning to a higher spiritual state requires consistent meditation and leading a solitary life. The old empire understands how much an EB gains from daily meditation, and you may come across evil agents that use unjust reasons to block your access to meditation centers. The best solution is to find an authentic master to train you on various meditation techniques. Your guide can also help you learn how to use telepathy to seek guidance from higher ascended masters. When you join protective spiritual groups such as Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or Kuan Yin, etc., it becomes difficult for malicious groups of EBs to attack your soul after experiencing physical death on Earth. Our next episode will explain the true timeline of events on Earth. It will be a shocker, since you'll realize that the history books you read in school consist of falsified stories. We will show you effective meditation techniques that most Earth EBs are not doing, and how to effectively send and receive telepathic communication from ascended masters and guides. You'll learn where to find the authentic master on planet Earth at this time. We also show you how to establish direct contact with Source. You will not want to miss this.